Chapter 29. Pleasures. Everyone should have some pleasure in life to give it balance with its duties. Argiro loved her garden. She took a lot of pleasure in having photos taken next to flowers, and she often wanted her whole family to do the same. It wasn't easy because, like many children, Jimmy, Peter, and Vula were very impatient and did not want to wait for just the right photo to be taken by their mother. Argiro usually cut a nice long-stemmed flower and told Vula to hold it because she was a girl, while she took a photo with her old box brownie camera. The camera was the same size and shape as half a tissue box. You had to open it up, put the film in, and wind it up inside. To take a photo, Argiro had to hold it very still at her waist and look through the little window before pushing down the camera button. Click, clack. One of her favourite places to visit was the botanical gardens, which had many beautiful flowers. The children enjoyed the space of the gardens, where they could roll down grassy hills and play. In the early 1960s, there was also a small zoo of caged guinea pigs, rabbits, cockatoos, budgerigars, peacocks, and monkeys. A couple of kangaroos and emus were also kept in a large area. There was a duck pond you could walk around with an island in the middle. Near the cages were some swings and a seesaw too, and near the tall fountain was an old cannon you could sit on. One day the family travelled from Hamilton to Melbourne for a holiday. At Argiro's sister's house, Argiro wanted a photo of their time there. It also gave Argiro the chance to dress up her daughter in a hat. She put it on Vula's head and then, as usual, gave her a flower to hold for the photo. It was a lily. Argiro's sister waited to take the photo, but Vula wasn't happy at all. She didn't want to take the flower from her mother, and she hated wearing her hat. However, Argiro thought it would look nice to have a photo with flowers in the background, and she ordered her daughter to hold the lily and to smile. She was very upset that her one and only daughter did not want to obey her. Argiro could not persuade Vula. She just couldn't understand why Vula was such a stubborn girl. Flowers fade quickly, and both Vula and the lily drooped. Argiro also wanted to take photos of her family in flower beds, even though the kids thought it was silly. They hated waiting and waiting and waiting while their mother took her time for just the right photo. Of course, Argiro wanted to take snapshots to remember what life was like for her family. But her kids couldn't care less. Even in her 90s, Argiro kept vases of flowers on her kitchen table, and she loved her roses. Her favourite ones were those with a perfume, especially the red ones. No one seemed to have hay fever in the 1960s, or maybe they didn't know much about it back then. Argiro would cut lots of flowers and put them in vases all over her house. Since their house had land all around it, Argiro had lots of space to grow flowers, as well as to make a big vegetable patch in her backyard. She grew tomatoes, spinach, pumpkin, beans, potatoes, and silver beet too. There was lots of parsley, mint, oregano, and basil too. As the front and back yards were easily reached, it came in handy when Deirdre visited. This girl was in Peter's grade, but she was also Vulla's friend. Argiro allowed Deirdre to bring her pet horse over when she visited. The kids could all take turns riding it around and around the house, until Deirdre thought it was time to go home. There was another very good thing about Deirdre. Her parents owned the local milk bar. Anyway, Deirdre was a kind girl and often had a bag of lollies to share with her friends. Peter's favourites were bubblegums because he liked the footy cards that came with them. Vulla's favourites were milk bottles and raspberries. They are still around. Jimmy liked all lollies. He had a sweet tooth. It may interest you to know that Jimmy grew up to become a dentist, and he advises his siblings not to eat sweets. Life is funny, isn't it? By the way, Vulla's and Jimmy's favourite drink was Fanta, and Peter's was Pepsi. Tasty soft drinks were made by the Tarax Company and were delivered in glass bottles in a crate to the house. They used to have bottle tops on them, and some people liked to collect all the different kinds of caps as a hobby. Sadly, Tarax has gone out of business. Did you get pleasure from climbing trees in your childhood? The three siblings, from a young age, loved climbing all the fruit trees in the backyard. There was a smallish apple tree and several different plum trees. The apple tree had a horizontal branch that they thought looked like a horse, so they tied a rope to it and bounced on the branch, pretending to ride it like a horse. That was fun until it broke under their weight, and their mother was upset that it would not bear many apples. Argiro told her children they should take better care of their trees, so they would get fruit from them. They decided that each of them would look after a tree, and soon chose which trees belonged to whom. Peter wanted the tallest plum tree near the back fence, from which he had hung the monorail. It had small yellow plums. Jimmy wanted the thick tree with the biggest and reddest plums, as he found it easiest to climb and have as his own. This was the tree to which they tied Vulla when she was the Indian in their game of cowboys and Indians. When Argiro came to the backyard and called them in for lunch, the boys left her tied to the tree. Vulla had the plum tree with the medium-sized red plums next to the swing, along the side fence. This tree had a branch growing almost horizontally across its trunk, at about 2.5 meters from the ground. She could climb onto the crossbar of the swing, get onto the top horizontal beam of the paling fence, and then onto the tree. However, it was very uncomfortable because both of her shoes couldn't fit in the small angle of the branches. It was hard to stand sideways on one shoe and admire the views of the neighbours' gardens. Vulla decided she needed to get more comfortable and build a tree house in her plum tree, but couldn't do it by herself. Argiro was very handy and nailed a plank of timber on the tree, making a wonderful platform for Vula to stand on with both feet. The horizontal branch made a natural fence for her to lean on, which she held onto tightly because she was afraid of heights. Vula was very happy. This was her tree house, and it gave her a great deal of pleasure. She was often seen climbing carefully onto her tree house at dusk, so she could watch the sun go down on the horizon. The colours of the sky were amazing, and she loved the hills and trees she could see everywhere. She came to think of nature as her personal friend. Whenever she felt lonely, Vula climbed onto her tree house and was comforted. For her 12th birthday, the oldest Haddis kid, Theo, gave her a gift of a few crystal gems he had bought and also some that he had dug up. Theo enjoyed looking for gemstones as a hobby, with his friend and neighbour, a boy of about the same age. Theo attended Hamilton College, one of the best private schools in Hamilton. All the other kids thought he was serious and like a grown-up because he was usually in his bedroom studying. Theo Haddis grew up to become a lawyer and run his own business, so his hard work paid off. Vula took the crystals up to her treehouse to admire them in the golden, glowing light of the setting sun. She saw the sparkling light and colour of her gems. Vula wanted to keep them on her treehouse, where she could enjoy them alone at her favourite time of the day. Taking a rusty knife from the garage, she cut out some little holes in the branches of her treehouse and carefully placed a crystal into each of them. There they remained for her pleasure and secret delight, shining as the sun hit them. Every evening, just before dusk, it became a celebration to climb her tree, see what was happening in the neighbouring yards, and then look towards the hills on the horizon. Have you noticed there is a special kind of golden light at dusk? During those few minutes of golden sunlight, when the light shone on her gems, Vula would look at the colours of each crystal and admire their beauty. They were all of different sizes and colours, so they all sparkled differently. Vula pretended she was a princess and felt richer than a king in her treehouse. In the end, though, Vula did not keep her crystals, but more of that later. Another pleasant thing about Hamilton was a celebration called Yulunga, an Aboriginal word meaning dance. Crowds would gather along Grey Street and outside Lucas Cafe to watch the Yulunga parade. There were clowns, people on stilts, jugglers, decorated floats, and music bands marching by. It was fun, colourful, and interesting. Everyone helped, even the kids, who would decorate their bikes and ride them in the parade. One year, Peter and Bob put streamers through the spokes of their bikes. Their bikes looked wonderful as they slowly rode them along in the parade. Jimmy and Vula cheered like mad for their brother, who had spent ages cleaning and decorating his beloved blue bike with its bent bell.